Today we're taking a closer look at Sony's 42-inch A90K and seeing if this OLED TV could be the perfect TV or monitor for your setup. So it comes with most features that you would want and expect, including 4K, 120Hz and VRR, which is perfect for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. But it is lacking a few features that could put you off wanting to buy one. Nothing major, but still worth mentioning. Now, I have been using this daily over the last 5 weeks on my desk, literally every single day. So today's review should give you a good idea on how it performs, as well as how it compares to the 42-inch LG C2. I'll cover it all, including gaming, productivity and movies, but any questions you've got along the way, please drop them below and I will answer those in the comments. Okay, let's start with the picture quality, and there's no denying that this OLED TV looks great. It's one of the most impressive OLED TVs that you can buy. Throwing some generic wallpapers and 4K video content on shows how vivid and sharp the picture looks. Now, the picture quality is certainly helped by the fact that it's an OLED, so you're going to be getting those perfect black levels and contrast, and that's due to the self-lighting pixels. And from my experience, there's little to no black crush, and the contrast and the dark areas of a scene in movies and gaming look great, but it's how sharp and clear the image is that makes this screen really stand out. Anything 4K generally does look good. Even the dashboard on the PlayStation 5 shows how sharp the text in the images are. And the fact that it supports Dolby Vision also means if you're paying for a streaming service or disc that has Dolby Vision, you're going to be getting an incredible picture quality. The highlights and shadows are well balanced, and there's obviously no blooming as it's an OLED TV. So I have been using this as a monitor in my setup, but let's not forget that this is a TV, and because of that we get all of the benefits of a TV as well. This includes an aerial and satellite port on the rear and the inbuilt app store. Now, you could of course use your PC or games console to play and stream your movies, but the native apps on here make it so much easier. I will talk more about the overall UI a little bit later, but the fact that you can jump between the different apps without needing to power on your console is brilliant. And we have all of the usual apps like Netflix, Disney and Prime, which shows off how great the screen looks. Now, typically, most of the content that I watch is either in 4K or 4K HDR, but there are situations where I do need to watch SDR content, and the way that the A90K handles that is remarkable, and that's down to the XR 4K upscaling that it has built in. It's able to take a 480p, 720p and 1080p image and upscale it to a 4K quality, which really is an absolute game changer. The clarity and detail in some of the images I've tested blew me away. It's obviously never going to be as good as native 4K, but it's likely the best upscaler that I've ever tried. So we know that the screen quality, HDR, contrast and colours look good, but what about the brightness? Well, OLEDs, typically speaking, don't get as bright as LCD or LED TVs, and that's a given. But with that said, the A90K just doesn't feel quite bright enough. Now, don't get me wrong, during those late night sessions in a dark room, it's absolutely fine. But during the day or with my lights on in my room, it often feels like it's running at a 70 to 80% brightness, even though this is maxed out at 100%. I think for most users it will be fine, but if you're already unimpressed with the brightness of most other OLEDs, this one could disappoint you. There are settings that you can toggle on and off to ensure that you're not using the automatic energy saving or ambient modes, which of course I disabled immediately. But even with those switched off, it's still lacking the punch that I hope to see. And comparing that to the 42-inch LG C2 that I had, the C2 is definitely brighter overall. Now, gaming is one of the main reasons that I use this desk setup. In fact, it's the only reason this setup even exists. And that means over the last 5 weeks I've put some serious gaming time in. This has included Warzone with my mates, and the new Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which has had a few performance issues, but that's on the game and not the TV. I've also been testing out the usual culprits like Gran Turismo 7 and Ratchet & Clank, and it's going to be no surprise that the A90K looks absolutely awesome with every game that I've played. Most of the time I do play with HDR switched on and the brightness is good, but it's the colour and the clarity of the games that are really worth talking about. And I still think Rift Apart is one of the best games to show off on any TV, as the vibrancy is just unmatched. Now, I swap between my monitors and TVs quite regularly, and playing on a 42-inch always feels ridiculous at first. But after a few days I get used to it, and honestly it just feels so immersive sitting this close to a screen this size. And as this supports 120Hz and VRR thanks to the HDMI 2.1 ports, it'll work perfectly with the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S. But it does only have two HDMI 2.1 ports. I think for most people that's not going to be a huge issue, but should you want to plug in a soundbar via the eARC, you'll only have one other port available to use on your consoles or PC. It also doesn't have a display port, so gaming on a PC will need to be done via HDMI instead. And a quick note, when plugging in any device where you want to take advantage of the 120Hz, make sure you enable this in the HDMI settings on the TV. For some strange reason, this is not switched on by default, and you'll be left wondering why you cannot get 120Hz to work. Now, one feature I really like is the auto HDR tone mapping. What this does is when you plug in your PlayStation 5, it takes the frustration and guessing out of those HDR sliders, as the TV and the PlayStation 5 will actually do it for you. This is a massively underrated feature and something that every PS5 owner would benefit from. It also supports ALLM, or the Auto Low Latency mode, and it will detect when you've plugged in a game's console. So you'll instantly get the game mode, which will reduce the input lag and response time to near instant. And as for the input lag, this is a 8.5 millisecond TV. So it's not as fast as some of the dedicated gaming monitors, but it's still one of the fastest TVs out there. Playing Warzone, for example, you're still going to be getting those instant kills with no trigger lag at all. Now, there are a couple of features that this TV does lack for gaming. One is the exclusion of a gaming hub or menu. So unlike the LG and Samsung TVs, Sony have decided not to include any kind of menu to quickly see or tweak your settings. This isn't an issue as such, but it would be nice if Sony implemented this in the future TVs. And another one, there's no 1440p support. So if you wanted to use 1440p on your PC or console, unfortunately it won't work. Now, over the last year or two, I've definitely seen a rise in people using 38, 40 and 42-inch screens as their monitors, and I think that's why a TV like this could be used as productivity reasons as well as gaming and movies. When it comes to using a TV with a PC, laptop or MacBook, there are a few things that you need to look for. The first is available port, so the A90K isn't marketed as a monitor, so it doesn't come with a display port or USB-C, and that means you will need to use an HDMI port instead. And from a size perspective, the 42 inch is crazy when it comes to productivity. At first, it definitely feels daunting if you're coming from a smaller screen, but give it a week or two and it just feels normal. My other daily monitor is a 40-inch ultra-wide and I could not go back to a smaller screen. But with that said, this isn't an ultra-wide, so it's a lot taller and you're getting far more screen real estate. Now, to manage my dashboard and all of the apps that I'm actually using, I use an app called Magnet, and that allows me to snap windows and tabs into any sort of layout that I would like. Whether that's moving my windows right into the corner of the screen or having the apps side by side. And on a screen this size, you can fit so much more on it. Seeing my entire timeline in Final Cut Pro is great and will instantly make me feel far more productive. And on top of that, the image is super sharp. Now, one of the questions I got during the unboxing video was, what is the text like? Well, I mean, if you press your face right up against the screen, you're going to see some slight artifacts. But honestly, sitting a couple of feet away, as most of you would, the text looks perfect and it's easily readable. I would not have an issue using this as a monitor, even writing documents and scripts every day. But if you were using this as a monitor, you might be concerned with ABL, or the auto brightness limiter. And this is where the entire screen dims if you've got a bright image on screen for too long. And from my experience over the last few weeks of using it, it has kicked in from time to time if I've left it on a screen for too long. But that is if I practically do not touch the screen at all for those 5 minutes. During normal use where I'm scrolling or writing documents, I've not seen it at all. And it's definitely nowhere near as harsh as we've seen on the LG OLEDs. As for the design of the TV, it's a nice looking screen. It has thin bezels across the top and the sides with a thicker chin across the bottom. Overall, it looks premium, and honestly, I think this looks great in my setup. Around the back, it has a plastic honeycomb pattern which covers the entire panel. It also comes with some covers that can be used to hide away the ports on your cables. Then there's the stand. Not only does this look and feel premium, mainly due to the fact that it's metal instead of plastic, but it can be fitted in 2 different ways. Either flat on the desk, which is how I use it, or using the provided spacers, it can be heightened to make it look more like a monitor. Personally, I think it looks far better lower, plus it means you cannot see any of your cables hanging down. But the fact that you can have it in 2 different ways is brilliant. So I've talked about how good the picture quality is in both SDR and HDR, and you might be wondering what my picture settings that I'm actually using. Well, the good news is this is straight out of the box. All I've done is ensure the gaming mode is enabled while using the PlayStation 5 and the energy saving mode is switched off, and that really is it. At no point have I felt the need to change or mess around with any of the settings. And that's a good thing, as it means you can buy this, unbox it and use it straight away. So most OLED TVs have a reflective or glossy screen, and that's a good thing as it helps with the clarity and the overall picture quality. Now, the A90K has a glossy finish that is heavily tinted, which does a pretty decent job of reducing the reflection in your room. Now, if you've got a well-lit room or you're near a window, this TV isn't going to be very forgiving, and you're going to see everything behind you. So my advice would be to make sure this isn't placed directly opposite a window or any light source, as you probably see in the reflection. And here's the remote control that it comes with, and it's nice. It's metal, it has a minimal design, and it only has a handful of buttons that you'll actually use. And it's also backlit, which makes using it at night that little bit easier. Oh, and a really cool feature is you can remap the TV button at the top to any port. For me, I have it mapped to the PS5 HDMI, so when I press it, it jumps straight to that port, without needing to select it from the list of inputs. As for the UI and menus, well, the Sony TV has one of the nicest UIs out there. It uses Google TV, so we get a nice tiled format for all of the movies, TV shows and apps on the home screen. It also has all of the major streaming apps you would expect, things like Netflix, Apple TV and Prime. Navigating around feels fast and snappy, and as far as UIs go, this is one of my favourites. So most people using a monitor in their setup will probably be using a set of headphones or external speakers, but the fact this is a TV and not a monitor means it does come with built-in speakers. These are positioned behind the screen and you're getting 2 speakers and 1 sub, and for a panel this small and thin they sound okay. The clarity for dialogue is good, but it lacks any kind of bass. But to be honest, if you're using a TV or a monitor on your setup and sound is something that's important to you, you're probably going to use some external speakers anyway. But have a listen to this and see what you think. So you might be wondering how much this TV costs. Well, the A90K comes in 2 sizes. We've got the 42-inch, which we've looked at today, and the 48-inch. I've put both prices on screen to give you an idea of what you would pay if you bought one today. Now, I mentioned at the start, as well as a few times throughout today's video, that the A90K is closely compared to the 42-inch LG C2 or C3 OLEDs. But here are the price of those TVs as well. With the LG being a cheaper like-for-like product, it's hard to justify the extra money for the Sony, although the picture quality on the Sony is stunning. So in summary, the Sony A90K OLED really is a brilliant TV. And like with any TV, there are pros and cons which are only relevant to your own personal needs. What works for me might not be the case for you and vice versa. But the ultimate question is it worth buying? Well, the easy answer is yes, of course. You're not going to be disappointed with this screen, as the picture quality and gaming features are incredible. But if the question is, should you buy the LG C2, C3 or A90K, I would probably lean towards the LG. There are several reasons for this, but the main 3 are price, brightness and the gaming features. Those are 3 pretty strong reasons to pick the LG over the Sony. But that doesn't mean the Sony is bad. It's just let down by those 3 points if you needed them. But let me know what you think. There's no wrong answers here, but I would be interested in hearing your thoughts. Now drop a nice 42-inch OLED in the comments and I'll give you a thumbs up for staying right till the end. And if you did enjoy today's video, check out my Sony A95K video next, as I reviewed the 65-inch QD OLED a few months ago. Thanks for watching, please like, sub and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time.